This is a self-portrait painted by Gustave Courbet, the leading French realism painter of the mid-19th century. It's titled The Desperate Man and was completed in 1845, at the start of his career, which would last over 3 decades. Little did he know at the time that this was the exact sentiment he would feel in the early 1870s. He never let go of it in his lifetime, and perhaps this was an omen for the terrible mistake of writing a letter that doomed his career. In this video, you'll learn everything about this fascinating artist and how he transformed art in the mid-1800s. You'll also learn exactly why he was forced to leave France and spent the final years of his life in a drunken haze in Switzerland. The fact that this painting of a trout is considered to be an allegorical self-portrait explains how he must have felt at the time. The story of Gustave Courbet starts on June 10, 1819, in Ornans, a village in the utmost eastern part of France. He was a descendant of a family in which anti-monarchical feelings prevailed, as his grandfather fought in the French Revolution. He showed artistic talent from a young age and used his 3 sisters as models for his drawings. This talent led him to Paris in 1839, and although he worked in several studios, he still tried to find his artistic purpose during this early period. Many of his early paintings of the 1840s were self-portraits, which show signs of the Romantic period that was still popular at the time. You can see the doubt on his face as to whether or not this was the right style for him. History painting was considered to be the most prestigious type of art at the time. This was regardless if it was painted in the contrasting Romantic or Neoclassical styles. Like with most things in his life, Gustave Courbet had his own opinion on the matter. He didn't believe that painters could accurately depict things that happened a century or more earlier. This was the key to understanding why Courbet chose to only depict the things that he could perceive, a notion that defined the rest of his career. This idea was made strong when he made trips to Belgium and the Netherlands in 1846 and 1847. There he had seen the paintings of Dutch Golden Age painters such as Frans Hals and Rembrandt van Rijn. He saw how they painted what they saw around them, and this was pretty much a confirmation of the direction he wanted to go in himself. The first painting he managed to get exhibited at the Paris Salon was his self-portrait with a black dog. His first major success only came 5 years later when he presented a painting titled After Dinner at Ornans. Like many of his most notable works, it depicts a scene featuring family members and friends in his native town. Not only was his painting praised by art critics, it also earned him a gold medal at the Paris Salon of 1849. This honor meant that his future paintings were exempt from jury approval at the prestigious salon. Unfortunately for Courbet, this rule changed in 1857. He didn't wait that long because he presented 2 of the most notable paintings of his career in 1850. The Stonebreakers was an accurate depiction of peasants at work that was unfortunately lost during the Allied bombing of Dresden in 1945. His other major painting was titled A Burial at Ornans, another work that depicts life as it really was in his hometown. The opinions of these paintings were split as they drew both immense praise and disgust from art critics. The execution of this burial scene was of the highest quality, and Courbet managed to display the incredible level of talent he was blessed with. It depicts the burial of his grand-uncle, an event he witnessed himself, and the people he painted were all the men and women of his hometown. A Burial at Ornans kind of reminds me of El Greco's painting titled The Burial of the Count of Orgaz, which also features the people of the painter's native Toledo. So why exactly was Courbet's masterpiece criticized? There are 2 main reasons for this, and the first is the most obvious as it was related to the sheer size of this painting. People painted common people all the time, and the Paris Salon was full of such paintings, but none of them were completed at such a scale. Secondly, there was a political undertone to his works, and that was considered to be dangerous to the establishment at the time. Suddenly, peasants were given a podium to shine, and he gladly associated himself with them. This is an important note for the rest of the story, and as you'll soon discover, it planted the seeds of his future demise. I tend to think that apart from his political ideas, Courbet simply enjoyed the attention he got when he painted provocative paintings. This is highlighted by some other paintings he completed at the time, which were deemed shocking to the French audience. In 1856, he painted the work titled Young Ladies Beside the Seine, which seemingly has an innocent title, right? Well, to a contemporary audience, it was instantly clear that these were two prostitutes who were resting in between customers. His true character was already exposed in 1854, when he painted himself with his patron Alfred Bruyat in a landscape. What was supposed to be an allegorical representation of the fragile wandering Jew turned into a portrait that dominated the man who funded his career at the time. That's not exactly the sign of a man who knows how to show any form of humility. Then again, he really thought of himself as being part of the proletariat and was clearly in favor of a socialist form of government. Gustave Courbet initiated the Realism movement together with his contemporaries, Jules Breton and Jean-François Millet. The latter painted the work titled The Gleaners in 1857, a painting that embodies the essence of the Realism movement of the mid-19th century. Breton, Millet, and Courbet found inspiration from peasants and other working-class people, and this wasn't exactly appreciated by the establishment. With the French Revolution of 1848 fresh in their minds, this sort of glorification of peasants made the upper class quite nervous, to say the least. Now here's another interesting anecdote. In 1855, Gustave Courbet received a terrible blow to his fragile ego. He saw the Paris Exposition of that year, a worldwide event that received over 5 million visitors, as the perfect show to display the full range of his talent. He completed a monumental painting for this event, titled The Artist's Studio, which was an allegory of his life as an artist. The complete title of this painting was The Painter's Studio, a real allegory summing up 7 years of my artistic and moral life. He was baffled when this painting and his earlier A Burial at Ornans were rejected by the exposition jury. Instead of accepting this refusal, he decided to do something extraordinary. He set up a temporary structure right next to the Universal Exposition and called it the Pavilion of Realism. The Exposition Courbet was painted on his building, and it had about 40 paintings he already completed on display. This just exemplifies his determination and perseverance, and also a little bit the arrogant character he possessed. More importantly, the pavilion he erected is seen today as the predecessor of the Salon des Refusés. This event stuck and gave rise to the Impressionists in the 1860s. I don't think personally that Courbet minded being mocked at his own event, because he hardly needed praise to do his thing. During the 1860s, he completed a wide variety of paintings, including landscapes, seascapes, nudes, still lifes, and a large number of hunting scenes. Despite his success as a painter, he couldn't help himself to remain politically involved, and that turned out to be the worst decision of his life. The Franco-Prussian War broke out in 1870, and following France's defeat, a temporary government was established known as the Paris Commune. Gustave Courbet became the president of the Federation of Artists during this short-lived revolutionary government. At the start of the war, however, Courbet had written a letter to the French government at the time. He proposed for the column at the Place Vendôme to be taken down and moved to a military complex known as Les Invalides. He saw it as a symbol of French imperialism because, after all, this column had been erected by Napoleon Bonaparte himself to commemorate his victories. The Communards, as these revolutionaries were called, took this a little too seriously, and they pulled down the column in 1871. The Paris Commune was overthrown at the end of May of the same year, and Gustave Courbet was blamed for the demolition of the column. To make things worse, he was imprisoned for 6 months for his involvement in the Paris Commune. Upon his release, he was forced to pay the cost of rebuilding the column to its former glory. The total price tag for this project was set at 323,000 francs, to be paid by Courbet in yearly installments of 10,000 francs, starting on January 1, 1878. The French painter tried to solve his problems by fleeing to Switzerland and drinking heavily, and this resulted in severe health problems. Ironically, Gustave Courbet died on December 31, 1877, the day before the first installment of 10,000 francs was due. It was the final act of defiance by the influential painter, a man who changed the course of art history in a remarkable way.